The show that we are putting on is supposed to represent a change in history, in music, in women, in a time period. I mean, the 60s, you can look at any other decade in history, and I would be able to argue that I don't think more happened to the country in 10 years, in 1960 than in any other time.
The 50s, women were still trying to please so much. In the 60s, it was a transition into the 70s and 80s.
Watching the progression through this show and watching the girl groups, which were pretty much designed, they really were created. They were created by the music industry. They were created by lyricists, songwriters.
The whole Motown thing, it started off, everybody was together. They had specific things. Everybody had their part. Everybody had to look like one whole picture.
The only song I knew by Diana Ross and the Supremes was Stop in the Name of Love. That's the only one I knew. And that was not one of the ones that we were singing.
They were called the Primettes. That was their name when they started. There were 4. They were started by Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard. And they added Diana Ross, they added another person. There were four young women at first. It ended up being 3. Several of them had to drop out because of their grades. Their parents forced them out. I think Florence Ballard actually had to leave for a while before she had to get her grades back up. I mean, they were children.
With a lot of those groups, the lead singer always ended up becoming like a solo artist. Basically, it had all to do with how she looked. It had way less to do with how she sounded because the original lead was a powerhouse. But Diana Ross looked good and everything.
When the show was happening, it was all about her. And the other girls were just there to back her up. Not really. She was kind of a solo act, but with backup singers. She wasn't in the whole group thing, I guess.
And of course, Diana Ross became one of the first truly crossover black artists as a female, who was identifiable to young white women and young black women as a beauty icon. So she's really, really, really important, I think, in terms of seeing beauty outside of your race. So that's the Supremes.
Okay, I love the Shangri-Las. Here's why. First thing I found out about them was that they were like the badasses of the girl groups, which made me, of course, excited because that's just fun. They started out very young. They were all in high school. They met at high school. They're from Queens, New York. They marketed themselves as like the normal nice girls with like the nice long skirts and the little beehives. And then the record label decided to make them into the Sex Kittens, and they would wear cat suits.
And which is really funny because they're the ones with more of a point to make too. It's kind of like people hid them on purpose, especially with the Shangri-Las. There's a recording of her originally singing it, and in her life, the character Christine plays, actually left from home, and they recorded the song right after she ran away, and you can hear her crying at the end of the song.
I talked to my mother about them, and her remembering the Shangri-Las and her actually being sort of mortified at the songs that they sang because it was just like, how can you tell stories like that? These are secrets, And my mother was just like, oh my God, yeah, the Shangri-Las sort of brought everything out of like the girls' closet.
That they actually sang songs about what was happening in their life.
They were on 2 circuits, because I guess back then they had 2 kinds of touring circuits. They had rock and roll and R&B, and they were pretty much like the only white people to be on the R&B because they were liked by everybody. But then they kind of disintegrated. They were around from 1964 was their big year, in 1965, and then they just started like not getting promoted. Now Mary Weiss is, the lead singer now, is trying to be a singer again, which I think is hilarious. Hilarious, because she doesn't sound that good. But, you know, she loves it, so she's trying to keep it alive, the Shangri-Las.
I saw the beginnings of the show and the women that were portrayed in the beginnings of the show as almost a cutout, as here is what they were supposed to be.
Because in the first act, we're still really girly, because it's just out of the 50s where everything is, you know, they still want to be perfect. Second half of the 60s, which is the second act, it's the natural look, it's freedom, it's leading into, you know, the liberation of women.
You know, during this time, we made an impact on people, and with our music, we were able to express ourselves and how we're feeling, and we were able to even change.
In the mid-60s, music began to reflect both the social and political changes happening. Some songs like the next one were banned in some cities because it discussed the conflict between social realities and liberal values.
Music was being used to speak about problems for the first time ever, to truly speak about things that were happening in the now, and started telling stories from a perspective that had never really been told before, which is from young eyes, looking at the world and asking serious questions. Like Janice Ian's song, can you imagine a young person saying those lyrics about race and never having addressed that issue before in their lives ever? But all of a sudden they're singing this song where they're actually talking about two different races coming together and the impact that has on a young person.
You can just imagine what she went through to sing those songs and then to be totally have to reconstruct her life because it tore her apart, and she went to an institution because she was so messed up.
I don't want to see you anymore, baby. How's it going, man? Guess what? I'm the first MVP chick! Don't mind me, man. I'm just fucking with you.
I knew a lot about Janis Joplin before I did the show. That's actually why I auditioned for the show, because I knew that there were going to be some Janis Joplin tunes, and I love Janis Joplin. I guess your first impression of Janis Joplin is, ooh, she was ugly. But the more I watched her and saw her before, when she seemed to be sober and when she was relatively young before she got hard into the drugs and alcohol, I was like, no, she wasn't ugly at all. So when I was cast as Janis Joplin, I started to do a lot of research as far as not just to try to figure out her body movements and what I would do to convey that and to be Janis Joplin on stage, but also just her story and to figure out how I can really be her.
She was like a child. She would do 110%, just blow you away, be so caught up in the music. And then she would look up and it would almost be like, oh my, what are you people doing here? And then incredibly self-conscious. And I think she was trying so hard to find a unique sound. And I think that was part of her identity issue too. That she didn't want to just be the white girl singing the blues. She wanted to be the blues.
She was very unhappy, obviously. The sexaholic thing and just being alone a lot.
She was always looking for love, constantly looking for love. She felt very alone, and music was how she connected with people.
I'm full of emotion and I want to release, and then you're on stage and you got the audience with you, it's a oneness you feel. I'm into me, plus they're into me, and everything comes together. You're full of it. I just want to feel as much as I can.
The emotional highs and lows of being a performer, Janice didn't have a coping mechanism for it. So drugs was the easiest answer. You're really, really, really high on stage, you know, naturally. And then you come down from that and you want to keep it going. You want to keep it going. And ergo speed.
The night that she died, she was in her hotel room and she was supposed to meet her boyfriend and her girlfriend because she had both. And the girlfriend didn't show up and thought that Janice was there with the boyfriend, and the boyfriend didn't show up and he thought Janice was there with the girlfriend, but she was there alone. And like that just is such a heartbreaking feeling, just to think she thought that these people were going to be with her, and so maybe, and then that's the night that she had an overdose.
So it's this horrible, sort of horrible coming together of her natural tendencies and the culture that she lived in, and neither of them were good for her.
Sitting up on my window, baby, looking out at all the rain. I don't know why, baby, all I do is love you.
She's such a fascinating woman, because she didn't sometimes, I think, know what to do with her gifts.
I gotta get the fuck out of here, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tina Turner!
Tina Turner. She was never in a group. She was always Tina Turner.
She was powerful, beautiful. She was singing, you know, balls out rock and roll.
They were moving. They didn't do anything like halfway. They were full out for everything.
She was unapologetic. She was hard and soft at the same time, which is a delicate balance for a woman to play.
She was beat real bad, and she was sexually assaulted, and she felt like she was in a situation she felt like she was in a situation that she had to be in. Ike was a very controlling guy. He was a very controlling man. He deceived her. He practically stole from her. I mean, he was just low down trash. I mean, he really lacked self-examination. The man was just bad. And, you know, by Tina having so much going on in her house, the only way that she could escape from that was on stage. In some way, she found strength within herself to remove herself from that situation. And she found a platform in that situation. And she found a way to reach out to women in this country. That's why she's such a legend. She's such a legacy. Tina was just real rough and real out there, and just real with her talent, and just like when she got on stage, she was alive. That's where it was happening for her. Her life was on stage. This was her time. This was her moment.
Aretha had become an important voice for women's rights and Black expression.
She's known as the Queen of Soul, so I was like, ooh, that's major. I better do this right. It just amazes me how much of a legend she is. I mean, she's won so many awards, and the BET has an award dedicated just to her. It's the BET Best Vocal Performance, and they nicknamed it as the Aretha Award. So, I mean, just for her to be such a legend that she has awards named after her, it's amazing. I don't necessarily care about being famous as much as impacting people's lives through my performance. And I feel that Aretha Franklin is the perfect role model for that. She's impacted people's lives.
The women who are represented in that show, they're all still personas. They're all still people who are working today. They're still bringing in huge concerts. Tina Turner's on tour right now. I mean, that's amazing. She's still seen as a sexy, powerful woman. Aretha Franklin can still get an incredible, filled house.
We are a really powerful gender. I mean, women, we got it going on. I mean, men know that. That's why they like us so much. That's why we got it going on.
Women aren't just this one Stepford wife type, cookie cutter, candy coated, whatever you want to call it, that we're not, and that we're all different, and we all have our ups and downs, and we all have our pains and our sorrows, but no matter what, it makes us stronger. And
one of the ways that they were really able to express themselves without feeling like men were just down their backs all the time was through music.
It's this new time when women are starting to get to do what they're doing now in society. So that's exciting to me, that this is the beginnings of women coming into their own.
We're showing people a part of history that maybe they don't understand, and a part of women's history that maybe they just don't get, a part of social history that they haven't quite connected to yet.
I want people to go away not feeling the heaviness of that, but the power of that decade and how it's shaped our lives and will continue to shape our lives.
And I think these women showed that women were more than their beauty. They were their political ideas, their social networks, their voices in terms of intelligence, and they were also considered sexy because of all of that, not because of a purely physical beauty.
I guess this whole thing is women empowerment. Just giving that, just really doing what we love doing, and just at any cost.
Award for the way you made me cry. Your are better